What if the things that scare you most were real? Late at night when you're lying in bed, have you ever felt like someone or something was watching you? What if that feeling wasn't just in your head? Tonight, we're diving into stories of faceless horrors, real events that will send chills down your spine. These are the kind of tales that will leave you afraid to turn off the lights. Welcome to True Stories Unveiled, where we reveal the terrifying truth behind what haunts you in the dark. If you want to explore more chilling true stories like this, make sure to subscribe to True Stories Unveiled. Hit the bell icon to never miss a new upload. Who knows what other faceless terrors we might uncover next. It was a cool autumn evening, and the air had a slight bite to it as she made her way home. The streets were quiet, too quiet, as the last remnants of the sun dipped below the horizon. She lived in a small town, the kind where everyone knew everyone, and walking home alone had never been a problem before. But tonight, something felt off. She pulled her jacket closer around her, quickening her pace as the street lights flickered on. The orange glow from the lamps cast long, eerie shadows on the ground. The trees lining the sidewalk seemed to stretch out, their branches twisting and bending like bony fingers reaching into the night. As she walked, the sound of her footsteps echoed in the still air. Tap, tap, tap. The rhythm was steady, comforting in a way. But suddenly, another sound joined hers. A second set of footsteps, faint at first, but unmistakable. Tap, tap, tap. She slowed down, her heart pounding in her chest. The other footsteps slowed too. She stopped, holding her breath as she turned her head to glance behind her. There was no one. The street was empty, bathed in the dim glow of the flickering streetlights. She shook her head, trying to brush off the unease creeping into her mind. It's nothing, she told herself, just my imagination. As she resumed her walk, the sound of her footsteps once again echoed through the quiet. But then she heard it again. Those other footsteps. This time, they were louder, more deliberate. Someone was definitely there. Her breath quickened, and she turned again. The street remained empty, save for the shadows that seemed to dance beneath the flickering lights. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears as her mind raced. Maybe someone is hiding? She scanned the street, bushes, the alleyways. Nothing. The unease settled into a growing fear. She began to walk faster now, her footsteps quick and sharp. The other footsteps followed, matching her pace. She felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up as the sound grew closer, almost right behind her. She spun around, heart pounding in her chest. Nothing. No one. The street remained desolate. The sound was unmistakable. Footsteps just a few paces behind her. And yet, no one was there. She broke into a jog, her breaths coming out in sharp gasps. Footsteps quickened too, now matching her faster pace. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone was following her, chasing her. Her pulse raced as she glanced over her shoulder again, hoping, praying to catch a glimpse of the pursuer. But the street remained empty. It was impossible. How could footsteps follow her when there was no one there? Her jog turned into a sprint. Her feet pounded against the pavement, and the footsteps behind her grew louder, closer. Panic surged through her. She darted past houses, their windows dark, curtains drawn. No one was awake. No one could help her. She didn't dare look back now, afraid of what she might or might not see. The sound was too close, far too close. Her breath hitched as she rounded the corner, her legs burning with effort. She had to get away. She didn't know from what, but she had to escape. She reached a crossroad and skidded to a halt, her lungs burning. She glanced down the various paths. Each street looked the same, empty, quiet, bathed in that same eerie flickering light. Footsteps had stopped, but she could feel it. Present. It was still there. It hadn't gone away. Her chest heaved as she struggled to catch her breath. Suddenly the sound started again. This time it wasn't just behind her. It was all around her. The footsteps echoed from every direction. She spun in place, trying to pinpoint the source. There was no one. She was surrounded by nothing but the faceless darkness, and the sound of footsteps closing in on her from every side. Her heart raced as she stumbled forward, picking a street at random, hoping to outrun whatever was following her. But as soon as she started running again, footsteps resumed, louder, faster, relentless. No matter how quickly she moved, the sound followed. It was right behind her, right beside her, inside her mind. She could feel it now. The presence. It was no longer just footsteps. There was something there, lurking in the shadows, just out of sight. It was watching her, following her, waiting for the right moment. Her mind spiraled into panic as she rounded another corner, her legs trembling beneath her. She needed to stop. She needed to catch her breath. But she couldn't stop. Not with the footsteps right on her heels. Then, without warning, footsteps stopped. Sudden silence was deafening. She slowed, her heart hammering in her chest, her breath ragged. The only sound now was her own breathing, echoing loudly in her ears. She turned again, expecting to see something. There was only darkness. Nothing moved. The street was still. She stood frozen in place, trying to understand. Footsteps had been so real, so close. How could they just stop? Her pulse raced as she scanned her surroundings, searching for any sign of movement. Then she felt it. A cold breeze brushed against the back of her neck, sending a shiver down her spine. Her entire body stiffened. Slowly she turned her head, her breath caught in her throat. There, standing just inches behind her, was a figure. Faceless, featureless, a shadowy silhouette in the dim light. It was tall, unnaturally tall, its form twisted and wrong, like something that didn't belong in this world. It loomed over her, its presence suffocating, oppressive. Her blood ran cold as the figure stood motionless, staring at her with eyes it didn't have. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Faceless horror had found her. Her body refused to move, paralyzed by fear. The faceless figure seemed to lean closer, its presence enveloping her. She could feel the cold radiating from it, seeping into her bones. The footsteps had stopped, but the terror was far from over. The figure raised a hand, long, thin, and distorted, and reached toward her. She felt the air grow colder, her breath coming out in shallow gasps. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to flee, but she was rooted in place. The faceless horror loomed ever closer, and in that moment she knew. There was no escaping it. It was always there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the moment when she was alone in the dark. And now it had found her.